Hello, everyone. This is so hard for me. I'm always used to saying hello, and then I hear everybody say hello back. But again, we're all adjusting to this new way of learning and interacting. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Hello. Oh, so many wonderful people joining us. Well, hello and welcome to our webinar for today. My name is Brett Siders, and I'm an ELT education consultant. Before I go on, I want to make sure I'm recording this for other people to be able to see on YouTube later on. Perfect, I am. All right. Today we're going to be looking at content and language integrated learning. Now, some of you might be going, wait a second, am I in the right webinar, or is that what we're going over today? Actually, the materials we're going to be looking at are all under the umbrella of Clil, which is Content and Language Integrated Learning. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. If you're not, we're going to look at it in just a little bit and see what that is and why it applies to what we'll be going over today. As you can see, really with Clil, what we'll be doing is using English to teach the other subjects. And today we're going to, of course, focus on science, but Clil can actually be used to teach many different subjects in your second or foreign language. Before I go on, I do want to say that one of our representatives online is a wonderful Spanish speaker. My Spanish, más o menos. So if you do have questions and want to kind of put it in full words in Spanish, please feel free to, and then we'll have some translation, because I would love to hear your questions. And again, we do have a Q&A along with chat questions as we go along. Please feel free to put them in there. I'll try to address them in the webinar, but I might also have to just address them at the end, and we will see. All right, I did want to mention that while this is, I believe, my third webinar I've done, and maybe I have some returning teachers with me, all the webinars, once they are recorded, you can find them on YouTube, or if you go directly through the Language World books, that's much easier. languageworldbooks.com. This website will have all the YouTube clips. All you need to do is click on the YouTube icon, and it'll take you right there. I think it's great because, in these 50 minutes that we have together, well, an hour, including the Q&A at the end, there's so much information. So you might want to go back and review that, and I really, really recommend that you do. For those of you who are new to this webinar, I'll just go over about myself. My name is Brett Siders, and I've been working in children's education for quite a long time now. Towards the last end of my career, I've also been training teachers in the ESL, EFL field, depending if I'm in a non-English speaking country or if I'm in a English speaking country. My educational background is educational psychology. I've just always been fascinated about how do we learn? How do people learn? How do adults learn? How do children learn? How do we learn languages? It's just always has fascinated me. I am currently working on a learning sciences master's degree, which couldn't have come at a better time, I feel, because it trains teachers, new teachers, about how to work in the 21st century, how to apply STEM, 21st century skills, and how to teach in what we call non-traditional or informal teaching settings, such as this online. So this seminar, I'm going to kind of have the same points, but things will change up a little bit compared to the past webinars that I've done. My real goal is to prepare teachers to be able to teach online, because this is a very new environment for us. Pardon me. What we're also going to look at is how to adapt classroom activities for online. And we're going to also look at activities that were designed for in the class or in person, especially science activities. But I believe many of these science activities can be adapted and used online. And those activities are going to be great. Those science activities are a great way to keep the students engaged. We'll also look at the e-learning tools that go along with the book that we'll be looking at, Interactive Science. And I love that first name of our book, Interactive. It's focusing on interaction between the students with each other and the students with the teacher. So we'll look at that more. But we talked about content and language integrated learning. What is that? You know, there's lots of different definitions of it, but I really just view it as immersion. It's language immersion. Many students, for instance, if you've gone to a university or high school or wherever, and you've taken classes in a foreign language or your second language, that's Clil. The class you took wasn't an English class. Rather, it was a science class taught in English. It's a social studies class taught in English. And there's an important reason why now in the 21st century, they're kind of pushing this educational theory more and more. And one of the reasons is it's a more natural way to learn English. Instead of in a class where you're focused on just learning a language, you're actually focused on learning a cool subject or a content while you use your foreign or second language. Now the question is why? Why use it? Well, it's been done for a while. I believe the gentleman who had kind of designed it, it was in the early 90s, but we have accumulated a good amount of research of why Clil is good and why it works. And the first reason, I always am surprised by this, but when I think about it deeper, it makes sense. Oh, there we go. Obviously, it improves the second language, right? If the second language is in English, you're practicing it, you're using it more. But the fascinating thing research has shown, it actually helps develop the first language more too. The best example I can give of this is maybe you've watched a movie in your native language. So you watch it, you've watched the movie, you've seen it, you've watched the dialogue, everything. Then you go and you watch that movie in your second language. In this case, you'd watch it in English. Same movie, but you're watching it in different languages. What it does is it enriches your vocab, gives you a deeper meaning for the words. So I think that's for me, it's a great reason of why you want to use Clil in your classroom. Of course, especially with our integrated science book that we'll be looking at today, it promotes new vocabulary. You know, if you're talking about scientific content or subjects, you're going to need to learn the relevant vocabulary for that. So it does give students an opportunity to extend their vocabulary. Of course, it builds the target language, and also, you know, I mentioned 21st century skills, which are kind of important. It teaches intercultural competence. It teaches students how to interact with material in a foreign language, preparing them if they ever wanted to travel overseas. Because as we know, English, which I don't view English as a Western language anymore. It isn't. It's kind of a language used by so many different countries, so many different cultures. I was always fascinated. You can go on YouTube and actually find kids' videos using Indian English, India as in the country, with the Indian accent. Right? Different accents, dialects of English that we now have to, I think, admit that English is not a Western language or just a British or Canadian or American or Australian language. It's a language being used by everybody. And then it requires the students to use the target language more naturally. Again, you're not just reciting or repeating the language that you heard or practicing the vocab, questions and answer questions about the material. Okay. I'm going to also try to look at different chats as they come up. Yes, and it's one thing we have to recognize with English. Somebody had mentioned there's so many different pronunciations, and it's true. And I don't believe there's not really a right or wrong way. I have worked for English companies that promoted, or their rules were kind of American phonics or American Canadian phonics. And there's some schools that have British phonics. So it's just whichever one you prefer and want to develop. But I don't believe one's more right than the other. So how can we keep kids engaged with these kind of content integrated learning subject matters? Well, pardon me. A lot of it's going to come interaction through asking questions. We're going to look at how much of the book we look at today is about asking questions. And there's even a fun game that allows you to do that as well. Of course, I've mentioned this before, you know, to keep kids engaged, we can't just go on and on talking as teachers. If you have someone else on the other end, we need to encourage more student production. I know it's ironic because here in this webinar, it's kind of more just me doing a lot of teacher talk, but in our classrooms, we of course want to give the students as much opportunity to use the language. And then also another way to keep kids engaged, we're gonna be looking at some science activities. And I admit these science activities were designed for in-person in the classroom, but we'll look at how the materials and how it's designed, it can be easily done online. Well, it can be done online. I won't say easily, but it can be done online. So again, we're gonna look for tips on online teaching, adapting activities for online, and then using e-learning materials. Now, I want to make sure we get a lot of time to be able to look at the cool book today. So I might kind of brush through some of the activities. If you're really deeply interested, I either recommend going and looking at the previous YouTube videos that I had mentioned, where we went over these activities more in depth, or you could review this YouTube later. So tips for online teaching. I kind of kept the golden ones, the tips that I think are really important and need to be repeated a lot because they're not very familiar to us. I've mentioned this many times before. I keep telling people, as an online teacher, we have to think like a movie or TV director, I say. We have to be aware of how we look on the camera. Why? Just so we look beautiful? No, because that helps keep the other person engaged. If you have distracting things like distracting lights or a weird camera angle, weird things in the back of your picture, it can be very distracting. So we need to be aware of that. We also need to think like an actor. I'm thinking about it now as I'm saying it. We do need to smile a lot, especially for our younger learners. Smiling is naturally engaging. Just think about when you're walking on the street. We look back and we smile. It's engaging. It's how we connect with people. For younger kids, it's essential. It makes them feel good and connects with the teacher. We also need to be aware of eye contact. I think this is the most awkward or unfamiliar aspect of teaching online. I can't look at my students as much. Like right now, I'm just looking at the little dot on my computer. But for you, it appears that I'm looking and making eye contact with you. Essential for keeping students engaged. It feels weird as the presenter or as the teacher, but it means a lot to the student who's listening. Remember, if you have 15 students, they all feel that you're looking directly at them. So I'm going to look at some activities. I've gone over these activities before. They are a little bit, you could use them with the interactive science book, but again, you could use them with so many different activities. I just talk about them a lot because I noticed not a lot of teachers doing it, and I think it has such great benefits for students. And a lot of these drama-based activities are related to either body, for instance, this is the gesture game. It's just using gestures to help kids understand vocabulary or sentences. With a lot of the science books, you'll see a lot of the vocab are actually action verbs. You know, when we talk about animals, there's swim, walk, fly, slither is even a word. Great opportunity to kind of play some interactive games with those. Again, these games would be, you know, 5 minutes long, maybe 10 minutes, depending on how engaged the students are. My big thing, though, are fluency building activities. These activities help students improve their fluency and pronunciation. I've had the benefit, the privilege to be able to travel and teach in different countries. And no matter what country or what culture, I've met so many students who have great vocabulary, great speaking abilities, using correct grammar structures, but they always kind of sound flat. It sounds almost unnatural. Now, when they talk in their native language, their first language, much different. Your tones, your pitches, and I think we need to practice that with our second language speakers. So some activities we can do to achieve that. Very fun ones. I've done this with little kids. I've done it with older kids. The first one is pass the word. You give the students a word. For instance, please. And then you play with them. How many different ways can we say this word? How many ways can we change our voice to make the word sound different? The reason this is funny, because if you say the word please, and let's say you say it loud, right? Please. If you whisper, please. If you're crying, please. What students start to realize is when you change your tone, you're also changing the meaning of the word too. This is something else we don't really teach our second language learners, and I think we need to begin doing that. A very fun activity, kind of building off of that, is what I call emotional speaking. Because really what I want to hear in my students, my second language students, is I want to hear emotion in their voice. That's the tone, that's the intonation in their voice. So again, I give a word, I often do like thank you. And how can you change the meaning of the word through the different sounds? You know, happy, thank you. Sad, thank you. Very fun for the kids, but again, it's making them become aware of, ooh, when I change how I say it, I'm also changing the meaning, which, as we know with language, often it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. We know this in our native language. I think we can start teaching it to our second language students. Well, I always give like a dialogue. If you're doing a dialogue, don't worry, little one, everyone will be fine. Because I like the kids talking to each other if you want to do dialogues. And I give each student a different emotion. Maybe I'd say, oh, the student who's reading as the owl is happy. The student reading as the ugly duckling is angry. And what becomes so fun is the different sounds and expressions that the kids make. Again, an activity that I've used because it really keeps them engaged and keeps them going. Another important question, and one I definitely have used with my kids when I do a content-based class, Clil, for instance, is the usually WH questions, the asking questions. Because asking questions, especially with science-related materials, is so important to keep students engaged, get them thinking, and practice answering. So these are very essential for students to be able to do. One game that I like to do with my students is the question game. Again, it depends on the level of the students. You as the teacher need to decide if it's developmentally appropriate for them, if it's too hard or too challenging. I would use it just maybe for your older students, but it's a great way to practice WH questions. Maybe even if you're using a grammar book and you come to the section where you practice WH questions, this is a fun activity for it. The game is actually called Two Truths and a Lie. It's very popular usually as an icebreaker in meetings and stuff, but I've liked to adapt it and use it as a English game. Now, there's, of course, many different questions that you can use and you can ask. I generally just focus on the WH questions at the beginning. But what I do is, in this game, you present 3 statements about yourself. And I recommend you do it as the teacher. And so you present your statement. So number 1, I went to school in Mexico. Number 2, I was in the military. Number 3, I once drove over my dad's boss. Yes, you heard that correctly. I once, in a car, drove over my dad's boss. Now, 2 of these are true, 1 is a lie. But here's the catch. What all students will do is immediately go, no, you didn't go to school in Mexico. No, that's the lie. That's the lie. That's not the point of the game. The point of the game is for them to ask questions, to learn, to kind of be detectives and find out which one is the truth, which one is the lie. So if you don't mind, how about we just take a couple of minutes and we'll try this activity right now. So what I would like you, the participants who are listening and watching right now, is for number 1, I went to school in Mexico. What questions could you ask me to understand if that's truth or a lie? Right now, please, in the chat, type a question. Like, be a detective. That's what I tell my students. You're going to be detectives. You're trying to find out which one is the lie. Please ask WH questions to understand about number 1. I went to school in Mexico. Oh, lots of chats. Oh. Okay, very good. I'm just going to ask you a few. Yeah, this one I should have rethought because I usually do this question in Asia, but of course we have many people here in Mexico. The question was, where in Mexico? I studied in Cuernavaca in Mexico. It was a Universidad Bilingual. It was like a bilingual university. Very good questions. I knew that one was gonna lie. All right, excellent. Pardon me. I want to move on to the second one. You guys did great with that. And the next one, I was in the military. What questions could you ask to see if that's a truth or a lie? Ooh, very good. When were you in the military? That's always the one I want for my kids to practice the when. I was in the military in 2000 to 2004. I did a 4-year service. Why did you study in the... I was not in military school. That's a very good question. Ooh, see, another reason I love this one is the amazing questions the students come up with. Someone asked me, is your father in the military? Yes, he was. He was in the military. Oh, so many different questions. Wonderful, wonderful. I am going to move on. Here's the last one. I always kind of give a funny or strange one to keep the kids engaged. The last one, I once drove over my dad's boss. What questions could you ask me? And I know you might be going, what is he saying? I literally mean like in a car. It was my dad's boss. My dad was in the military, and it was a general, and I drove over him. What questions do you? Now all the questions just stop. They're like, this one's way too weird. Oh, perfect. How old were you? That's what I love when students start asking. I was 8. I was 8 years old. Yeah, you're like, if I was 25 years old, that would have made it much different, right? Was your dad fired? No, he was not fired. What? Yes, this one gets lots of why questions. Why would you do that? It was an accident. I was actually in a golf cart, and all, as military people love to do, they love to play golf. I was on a golf cart, and I accidentally pushed on the gas too hard, and I drove over him. The funny thing is, I thought he was just this little old man. I didn't really think, I was like, didn't know. But everybody around me was so shocked, and then I realized I was really in trouble. You got wonderful, wonderful questions. Okay, I'm going to move a little fast here, but what I love for my students to do next is I love them to tell me which one they think is the lie and why. Why do you think it's a lie? I'm not looking for the right question. I'm looking for the kids to be able to answer, express themselves in English. Uh, the truth is if I can click off, pardon me. I was not in the military. I was never in the military. My father was in the military, but I was not. I did go to school in Mexico to learn Spanish. I maybe had too much fun in Cuernavaca and didn't study enough. And yeah, when I was a kid, I did drive over my dad's boss, and he's never, ever let me forget it. Well, I want to move on, but this question, this game, the reason I like using it for my students with science classes is because I will be asking them a lot of questions, and I encourage them to ask a lot of questions. So I like doing these games to practice question words, or excuse me, asking questions, or specifically WH questions. All right, using the e-learning materials. With this book, I want to make sure how we're doing on time. Excellent. I've mentioned before that with many of these books, a lot of them for years have come out with these extra resources and extra materials. I know myself and other teachers weren't always really using them. They were there, they were great, but we just kind of had a different in-class strategy. But before, when I considered them extra and supplementary, but now they're in my mind a necessity. So many of these online tools are made to keep students engaged, to click, to play. You know, the ebooks, they'll have the videos on them, they'll have the audio files on them. I just feel it's very essential that the children in their homes on their screen need something to see. And unless you want to develop lots of PPTs, or maybe you have a book that also has PPTs, I think the ebook or different apps that are available are wonderful. We'll look at some of the teacher resources, teacher's manuals, tests, the syllabi. Yes, that syllabi is actually the plural for syllabus. Isn't English so weird? Also, we're going to look at some student resources. Now, there's this very cool app that has just released this month, actually, free online, that is for the interactive science book. Now, this is something students can use at home, but if I were teaching using this book, I would most likely use this for the focus of my class. So there's two types of kind of interactive science books. Of course, the interactive science is for lower primary students. So it's a good introductory book. We'll look at kind of the page layouts and see how it's really good for young learners. And the reason I emphasize that is because I know many teachers kind of look at science, or they see interactive science, and science, it's kind of difficult, it's challenging. It's already hard enough to teach them English. Now I have to teach them science too. But what's important to realize is these books are not made for first language speakers. They're specifically made for students learning English as a second or foreign language. Someone had asked about the hybrid CD. The hybrid CD, I believe they use the term hybrid because it has both audio and video on it. So it has both. Going on, for your upper primary students, if you want, there's the Interactive Science Plus book. So these are kind of for your older students. It's a little bit more detailed. For the sake of this webinar and for the sake of time, we'll be just looking at the regular interactive science for the lower primary students. And with it comes, of course, lesson plans and interactive games. Yes, someone had just asked if there's interactive games. There are interactive activities. I wouldn't say games, but they are interactive activities. There is a teacher's manual that goes very in depth. I really looked at this in detail, and what I loved about it is for those teachers who maybe aren't comfortable with science, it gives you all the steps and all the knowledge, all the questions that you should be asking your students. So the teacher's manual is very, very useful. The student app. Now, the student app obviously was designed for the students, but as I was using it, like I had mentioned earlier, I would want to use it to actually teach the class. There's a lot of fun things that can be done with it online when you're working with your students. And a science activity. Of course, this is science. Why do we choose a science book? Because there's very fun learning opportunities with science activities. And we'll kind of look at that later, and I'll show you how we can adapt those science activities for an online class. So this is kind of the contents of the book one. And the reason I wanted to show you it's actually very fascinating if you look at it. Now, the book is kind of divided into, each book is divided into 4 sections and covering different areas of science. Now, what I want to focus on, if you can see my cursor there, is each unit is just a couple of pages long. It's not horribly extensive, and it's not filled with tons of information that would be just way too hard for young learners. So you can see each unit is about 4 pages with very simple activities, of course, because this is book 1. They do become more challenging and more activities are included the higher the books go. But what I also love is the science activities. They have more than just one. Before, I taught with a science book, and I had to go and like Google activities. I had to find activities that I could connect to the content in the book. But with these, they have it right in there for you. Someone had just asked about how do we manage these collaborative learning in online science classes. Since again, we'll be looking at the younger students, it's going to be far more hard for the students to collaborate together. How I have used a science activity online it was far more just teacher and student interaction. I do believe for your older students, though, you would be able to get them to kind of collaborate together. So one thing I wanted to quickly go over is the science activities and how science activities are just ripe with so many opportunities, so many English-speaking opportunities. I do see questions to answer. Ooh. Someone is saying they have many tools for the internet page of the books, but the audios are not available. I know someone else will be able to address that for you in just a little bit. With the science activities, though, the reason I like them is look at just this page that we have right here. So this is just straight from the book. This is the paper. Now, for me, and for what I want us to go over today, is this page presents so many different speaking opportunities. You see there's the objective, the materials, the procedure. What we're going to do later on, after we go over the book, is look at how we can take this one page and almost have an entire lesson of just this one activity. And it won't be just doing the activity, it will be lots of speaking and interacting together. Before we move into that, I do want to kind of show you what the book looks like overall. And I would like to show you, I'm going to move to actually, you're seeing the same thing right here, but this is actually just a quick layout of that first unit. So that first unit that we see is living things. For the teacher, there's tons of information on how to use this book. But what I want you to pay attention to is that here's our first page. Please just take a couple of seconds to look at it. What we see here on this page is lots of questions. This is part of the interactive part of the title, Interactive Science. Many teachers kind of make the air of always telling the students, giving the answer. You know, maybe sometimes we do this with our native speakers or even our own children. Sometimes we just tell them. What we really want to do is not give them the answer. We want to ask a question. We want them to give us an answer. And what's great in this opportunity, when I ask these questions to students, what is a living thing? How do animals move? Yes, I would like them to be able to answer it correctly with the correct scientific answer, but mostly it's just, I want to hear your ideas. What do you think? You know, if a student in English, their second language, goes, what's a living thing? And they maybe give a half correct answer, I'm not going to go, no, that's wrong. I'm going to be like, ooh, good. Practice speaking. I'm not looking for the right answer as much as I want to hear what you think. This is, again, engaging the students. And then afterwards, we kind of show them what it is. We have keywords on the page. Sometimes with these keywords, you can do simple vocab activities. I haven't been able to do a lot of kind of drama-based games with these vocab words, but this is just where we're developing the students' extended vocab by teaching them vocabulary that they normally wouldn't see in a normal ESL book. So moving on, what I want to show here is really the writing section of the book. I once used a science book a long time ago, and it was very frustrating because I felt just on one page, or technically 2 pages, was just way too much information, way too much written text, not enough pictures. And it was a book that was designed for lower primary, but it just wasn't appropriate for them. They needed simple statements, simple questions, lots of pictures, good colors, everything to kind of keep them engaged. And a lot about the science, this is just a quick comprehension check. It's really not teaching them the science. It's just the comprehension check. And then we move on to our second chapter, our second unit, and it moves on from there. And then what happens at the end is we engage in the science activity that relates to both of those units. Generally, with a book like this, you can easily get mini lessons out of it, depending on how much time you want to spend. I'll be honest, when it comes to asking questions, the reason I've emphasized and stressed that in this webinar is I've almost had an entire class of just these first 2 pages, because with the class, I just was constantly asking questions. They were asking questions. It was far more important for them to practice the English skills, but at the same time, they were learning the scientific facts too. What makes it easy also is most likely by the time the students are learning this in your English class, they've already covered it in their native speaking classes. So they've learned this. Now they can kind of get a refresher, but with English. And again, as we saw, what research shows, this will not only help them build their English skills, but it'll also help build their native speaking skills. We'll go to, and now I think one of the very fun things before we get into the activities is truly just put online this month, at the beginning of July, is the interactive science app. This is something that students can access at home, but it's something you as the teacher could also use in your class. So here you can see as I move, it's kind of cool, very interactive, book 1, book 2, book 3, and then as we move into the plus books, there's book 1, book 2, and book 3. And you can just tell by the animation itself, and the picture qualities that one group is for the lower primary and another group of books is for the upper primary. Well, we're looking at book 1, so I will click on that. Now, as you can see, here are all our units. Again, there were 20 units. They're all here for you to access. I'll go along with what we're doing. We're looking at Unit 1, Living Things. So once I access it, this is very interactive. Again, it was designed for students to use at home on their own individually, but you can easily use it with your students in the class. Again, we get into questions. What is a living thing? Now, I can't ask that question to you teachers because of course you all have the answers for that, but this is where we get the student engagement. Now, it is up to you, depending on your style of teaching. Are the kids able to type their answers? If not, okay. What I would do in this section, and what I have done in the past, is I always will call on individual students. If I have a good rapport with them, or if they're very confident, I don't ever mind doing that. If they're a little bit more shy or they're uncomfortable, I kind of let them kind of watch and observe, or work with a group to do it. So in this, what is a living thing? How do animals move? If you see at the bottom, kind of the bottom right here, there's this blue circle with kind of a star in it. It will actually jump to a video with audio and text, kind of telling you what it is in simple statements. So we were asking, what is a living thing? Well, here's an example. A rabbit is a living thing. It moves, eats, and drinks. It also breathes air. We can, of course, interact with the video. Or
a rabbit
use the text,
is a living thing.
Audio.
It moves, eats, and drinks. It also breathes air.
So again, these are just different ways for the kids to kind of interact and stay engaged and understand the material better. You don't always have to explain everything. Many of the things will be in the app itself. And all you have to do is click the button, and it takes you back to the main page. Now the arrow button, it's not a play button, it's a direction button, just takes me. And now here I go. Here I have really the same book content, but if you notice, there's actually far more questions that they're asking us. Again, this is just emphasizing or highlighting the value of questions in a science class. So again, what do living things need? What I always do with my students, if they give me an answer, what do living things need? And they go, water. Extend it. Give me a full sentence. What do living things need? Living things need water. Good. I always try to encourage it, because I have to do it, not even with my younger students, my older students, is to encourage them and sometimes push them to say more, to give me a full sentence when they give an answer. So as you go, what do living things need? If I click on the button, it clicks into more examples. It gives me examples, and it gives me answers with fun, kind of engaging pictures. I see some other people say, yeah, we really have to get kids speaking in fuller sentences everywhere. And I mean, it's natural, right? Even when I was learning Spanish, like I would kind of give short answers, either one-word answers or short phrases. But we have to encourage the kids. We have to push them to practice speaking in full sentences. Okay, so you can see it provides different examples, and each one of these are a different activity. I was looking at this one before, oh, pardon me. See, just giving us more information. Some of these do have interactive activities. Someone had asked, are they games? I wouldn't really classify them as games. I feel they're more activities. So here's one. We have the picture with that wonderful forest jungle music. And we have our interactive words. Here are our action words. I'm going to turn the audio down a little bit. It's a little loud. So we have our different vocab words. Here are our different action verbs. Now in this, remember, it was designed for students on their own to go, okay, swim. Where's something swimming? Oh, I see this tapir. I think that's a tapir down there, swimming. Fly, okay, the butterfly flies. Now the question is, how do we make students engaged in this? The best thing that I have done, or I shouldn't say the best thing, what has worked for me is, again, I call on students online. I have the list of names, I have their pictures ready. I'm like, hey, John, what hops? What hops? Can you see something that hops? You know, and what walks, what swings? That's the best way I've been interactive. I don't just talk and then, there's no more swim. How about fly? There's another fly. What I really want to do is, again, just ask the kids and get them to answer the questions. An option for you, and it depends really, I wouldn't do this with lower primary, I'd only do it with upper primary. When you do like a Zoom class, you as the host, as the teacher, can give a student the ability to control the screen. I've done this one time, no, I did it 2 times. Once with younger kids, and it did not work. Once I did it with older kids, and it actually worked really well. I went to each student and say, hey, what's something that swims? As a host, I click over and I give them the right to be the host temporarily, and then they go and click and do one. And you could, using Zoom, go to each student and give them the right, them the opportunity to control the screen. Again, that depends on the class. You know your students better than anybody. So it's only if you think they're mature enough and ready to do that. Okay. So with this activity, that's just how the book interacts with these, this interactive app. Again, I think I've repeated this many times, but it was designed for the students, but I kind of like to use these in my class as the focal point. Pardon me, I see lots of questions are coming up. Yes, I always tell, I always tell teachers that you know your students. I might be a teacher trainer, but you know your students better. You know what will work and what won't work. My goal is to just kind of give you lots of different activities, and then you can take them and tailor them to your classes because you know what your class needs. All right. Now what I'd like to do, of course, with the science book, the value of a science book for me is, I thought I got it there, pardon me, one more time, are the activities. So, pardon me, it's going crazy here. So again, here are the science activities, and remember, every 2 units in this book, you get 1 activity, which I love it. And I love it that it has everything, the materials, the procedures, and you don't have to go and find some fun activity to do on your own. Now, the reason I love these a lot, and I talk about them a lot, is because they have so many speaking opportunities, right? With our materials, you can easily ask students, what materials do we need? We need 2 paper towels. We need water. We need yarn. Again, here I'm trying to get them answering in a full sentence. Depending on your level, you can make it more challenging or let them do a little bit more free speak. I'm always thinking of my first level students who are just being introduced to this. I kind of give them the sentence structure. What do you need? I need. Also, it gives opportunities to learn vocab. Maybe they've learned water, ruler. Maybe they don't know what yarn is. I've mentioned before of the importance in not just in class, but especially online, is having the materials with you. So it says, you need 2 paper towels. What I would do with my students is not only would I have all the materials, because it's not just me doing this activity, I want them in their home doing it too. And I understand this is a challenge because it means the students on their own or in their home with their parents need to prepare everything themselves. And I understand that's a challenge. If it's too challenging and the parents aren't helping or it's not working out, the best thing you can do is you have all the materials in your home on your side and you do the activity with them in front of them. But I do think the best option and what we would do if we were in class is make sure they have all the materials, and as they watch you do the activity, they are copying it and doing it in their homes. So I go over the materials with the students. We need 2 paper towels, 2 small cups. And again, these are all great speaking opportunities. And if students don't know, what is it? Oh, it's a cup. Again, just depending on where they are in their speaking level. All these are speaking opportunities. I get in detail, you know, what do I need? Oh, I need water. Here's my water. Do you have water? Where's your water? Everyone, if you need, I always say, like, show me your water. Show me your water. Okay, good. You have the water. Excellent. Okay, we have ruler. Everyone have the ruler? Show me your ruler. Excellent, excellent. Simple things like that to help you interact with the students. But what I've always loved and what is really good for a deeper understanding is using the procedure or the steps, whatever it may be. This is perfect for not only speaking, they can practice reading the directions and reading them aloud. If you want, you can have them do an emotional voice if you didn't think it was too silly. But what also does is it's helping them comprehend the different steps. One activity I love to do with my students, you can do it either before the activity, the science activity, or you can do after, is putting the steps in order, putting them in the correct order. Because why? What does this mean in order for them to put in the correct order? If you, of course, if you're doing this before they see it in the book, before they see the activity, putting the steps in order means they not only have to read it, but then they have to comprehend it. And they have to actually have a deeper comprehension and realize, oh, this really should go first and this should go second. With these instructions, if you feel, ooh, that's too long for my students, you know, for book one, it's too much. What you can do, pardon me for a second, I'll go back. You can also take a picture or use the pictures that are in the book, right? Step 3, step 4, step 5, and have the students match the text procedure with the picture of the procedure. What is that showing? That's showing comprehension. They're able to read it and understand it. So in this case, I won't go over too much. Pardon me, I'm reading chats at the same time, and I saw someone said the scientific method, and that's exactly correct. What we're doing with the students here in this content language integrated learning class is we're teaching them the scientific method, and this is the proper steps. So we go, what would happen first? What should go first? I won't do that with you guys. You don't have to worry. But what I do, and you could easily make a short slide. This slide was very quick for me to do. I just copied it from the book actually and put it on there. And all you have to do is go, what goes first? Okay, yeah, so first we need to fold the paper towel and place it around the inside of the cup. And then again, you're just having them put them in the correct order. If it's incorrect, that's fine. But what we want them to do is read it and comprehend it. That's what's showing their comprehension. If they're able to put it in the correct order, perfect. Now, again, if you feel for like a book one, this is too challenging, then what I would recommend is do it after the activity as a review, as a, what did we do when we did this activity? We were growing bean sprouts. How did we do it? Have them afterwards, after they've done the whole activity, go back and put the steps in the correct order. That's a great way for them to review the vocab and review the steps. And I just go on, you know, I put it up, I mix them around. Simply stuff like that. But it's a great activity for them to be able to understand what they are doing. I do want to, pardon me, go back with the science activity. What I recommend with each step, because if anybody has done an activity in class, you know, if the students have the materials, they'll get distracted and start playing around with it. This is where, you know, a strong attention grabber and strong focus on follow me happens. So I'm going to kind of just go through maybe the first two steps here. So number one says fold the paper towel and place it around the inside of the cup. Okay. And sometimes what I do, depending on the student's level, where they are, I want them to read it and then show me. Show me that you understand what that is. What does that look like? Okay, fold the paper towel. Come on, fold it. Okay, good. And then it says, place it around the inside of the cup. Now, if I'm watching my students and I'm watching on the screen and they're kind of like, what? I don't know. Fine. I then do it in front of them. Okay, fold the paper. So every action I do with as I'm speaking, fold the paper, place it around the inside of the cup. Okay. And again, I always do checks. Is everybody's inside? Please show me your cup. Show me your cup. Okay, good, good, good. And then number 2, make the second paper towel into a ball. Everyone, can you take a paper towel, make it into a ball? Good, 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 good. And then place it inside the cup. Okay. Now, obviously, we have 6 more steps. I don't need to go through them all with you, but this is where you have options. Do you want the students to do each step as you watch and you check them, and then you kind of do it to follow along with them, or do you need to do it first and they follow along with you? Again, you know your students. And if you've never done this before, it's an experiment. Try it with your students. If they're able to easily do it, they don't need to follow along, encourage them to do it on their own. But most importantly, because obviously they'll be doing something like this, right? They'll be, okay, doing it. What you need to encourage them to do is show you. You need to see it on the screen, because then you're understanding who's following along, who isn't, who gets it, and who doesn't. Great activity for that. Okay, I need to check on the time real quick. We're actually coming to the end of the webinar, but what I really want to leave you with here is this simple 2 pages, technically it's 2 pages in the book when you open the book, has so many ESL opportunities, comprehension opportunities, speaking opportunities, vocab opportunities, question and answer opportunities. There's so many things involved. Again, these activities, there's so many different kinds of science activities in this interactive science book that if you want to do different games or activities, you'll probably need to find games or activities related to the subject. So this is about living things. You might need to find a game or activity about living things. Another one is electricity. You might need to find a game or activity about electricity. But other than that, I almost feel you don't need that with this book, because they have a science activity after every 2 units, which I love. So that kind of brings us to an end. What I do want to leave you with also is, I know there's so many questions about the different products that come with these books. I did talk about the syllabi, and I talked about the teacher's manual, and I do have it up there, and we didn't have time for it, but I know you've seen a teacher's manual before. If you want to learn more about these, what I recommend is to contact your local distributor. I do not have that information, but I know you'll be able to find it easily through one of our representatives, and they'll be able to go more in detail, because again, the supplementary or extra materials are so vast these days. There's so much for us to use in our classrooms. So before we end it, what I'd like to do is to take this opportunity. I know so many people have been asking wonderful questions and giving me great ideas. I've addressed a few of those, but if anybody, as we end this webinar, has questions, please feel free. We have about 5 more minutes. Whatever questions you have, if you feel more comfortable writing them in Spanish, please do. But this is the opportunity for me to answer your specific questions. So I'm going to be quiet for a little bit and just be focusing on the chat box and the Q&A box. Someone asked a good question. What happens if at the end they don't get the expected results? Like, you don't get the scientific results. In this case, this activity was, we would take some seeds and have the bean sprouts. Most important, right, isn't and maybe a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but for me, in these beginning stages, what's important is you're teaching the scientific method. You're teaching them about, making sure you have your materials ready, making sure you know the different steps for the procedure. In the activity we saw, there's actually, where they track the information. Day 1, what happens? Day 2, what happens? This is all teaching them, I would say, the habits of scientific thinking. And most important, because we are, of course, first and foremost ESL teachers, is that they're using the language. If they've been using the language, asking questions, if they've asked questions, they've been doing the readings, they're in order, and then let's just say experiment fails, in no way do I think that's a failure. They did so many correct things. They had so many successes by language and learning about the scientific method. I consider. And I would add one thing that we're trying to teach with students. This might have to be done in their native language. Is we don't always get the best results the first time. Just because we didn't get the right answer the first time doesn't mean we failed. What I always teach my students, I teach my own children this, is failure is giving up. That's failure. Oh, the seed didn't grow correctly? Okay, what did we do wrong? What could we do next time? This is where the questions again get so important. And I notice with my students and with my own children, it's something that has to be repeated a lot, right? They don't see the seed grow, and some of them will go, it sucks, it failed. We have to teach them science learning is a process. Just because it doesn't happen correctly the first time doesn't mean we just give up. We keep going with our science projects. I love what someone put. Thank you for sharing that idea. What a great opportunity for students to present the results to the group, right? That's usually the last step of the scientific method, to show your results. If you could have them give short presents. And what I have done with my students is I say, oh, what worked? What do you want to change next time? I don't think of it as success and failure or mistake. It's just what didn't work? What can we do next time? For my younger kids, I try to give them the simplest language possible so they can answer those questions. Pardon me, lots of great questions here. Someone had said they're working with secondary students and where they could find some resources for practical, you say experiences at home, you mean maybe experiments? What I would say nowadays with the whole world, constantly talking about STEM, it started in the universities, we need more STEM, but it's now trickled down to our primary and secondary schools that online, I think there's lots of different opportunities and options. I personally, like with my son, as I've been teaching him at home here, I got like a STEAM book. STEAM is STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. There's lots of different resources now, books either that you might need to purchase yourself or lots of examples online. Yes, and again, someone mentioned, I always do it in the class using gestures and using different TPR to help teach the vocab, but online, again, it's one of those things, it's essential. They need to see it, they need to do it and practice it. Ooh, everybody has so many wonderful questions. Wonderful idea. See, and this is another thing about teaching and learning in the 21st century. Teachers are learning while they teach. Some of you had some great examples. Someone said, you can make a list of predictions, right? That is the hypothesis. If you feel your students are ready for that, it's a question word. What do you think will happen? I think it will grow. I think it won't grow. You can always give them simpler language for their younger students, but again, you're just getting them thinking about it. Yeah, for online experiments, for STEM or STEAM, again, that's with the arts, which I do think include with science, technology, engineering, math is very important these days. We shouldn't leave the arts out. Great resources online. And there's also actually, I recommend if you're wanting to do this for your ESL students, there are a lot of books, I know through Language World, I've personally used them, that are specifically STEAM ESL books. So it's Clil. You're teaching science, technology, engineering, art, and math through English. Yes, and also depending, this is more with your distributor. I do know some of the books do come with the materials themselves. So if the students have that book, then it makes it far more easier for them to get materials. But I would say with most of the experiments that I like, it is resources and materials that many people would have at their home. If they, I would recommend kind of finding different ways to make adjustments. You know, if they don't have bean seeds, right? What else? In this experiment, it called for putting bean seeds in. If you don't, what else could you do? Pardon me, I see some more. A non-bilingual school. So do you mean for Flor de Maria, the non-bilingual school, if it's just in Spanish, you could use. If it's just in English, the only thing you'll have to realize is it might be a little bit too easy for them. Because as I mentioned, these books were specifically designed and written for English as a second language learner. Someone had asked me about the app. The app is available for everyone and available for the students to be able to use. So many great questions. I'm hoping I'm able to get them all. Okay. I do realize I've gone over my time a little bit. I still see some great questions, so I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer, but I'm going to stop the recording. Everyone, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to kind of come, join us, learn, and also at the same time, many of you were teaching me. I got some great ideas from you, so I'm glad we could have this opportunity to share together. Again, if you have any more questions about the book and the materials that come with it, your local distributors and Language World, who's also online right now, will be the best person to be able to answer those questions about the products. So again, everybody, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you very much. Goodbye.